Hey there, my name is Kelly Dale with Off the Beaded Path. Thank you so much for joining me for another new video. Now, today's video is mainly for beginner stitchers or people who have never had the confidence to try a peyote stitch pattern, or you're just not familiar with how to read a pattern, because today's video is going to be all about how to read a peyote stitch pattern. Now, for my advanced friends and my friends who are really good at peyote stitch, please make sure to check out near the end of this video, because there's going to be a free pattern involved in today's project. So if you will, hit that pause button and run over to offthebeadedpath.beadstore.com and download this little packet. All right, it is going to have a wealth of knowledge on how to read a basic peyote pattern. Now remember, I said it was going to contain a free pattern as well, or today's video would be. Well, what we are going to use, and it's also connected with that pattern, it's another download, is the download for this simple 3-drop peyote stitch bracelet in Halloween colors, but you can do it in any color. We're going to be referencing this pattern today, so make sure to go and download both of these so that you will be ready to learn. Let's get started. All right, so hopefully you went and downloaded the little packet. You'll notice that it's a pretty good amount of pages. It's 8 pages. So there's a lot we're going to learn today about how to read a basic pattern. So if you start out on page 1, basically, the first thing that you need to know is almost every peyote stitch pattern is going to be written similar to the one that you're going to see today. Now, there are designers who do them completely different, and that's okay, but generally, this is what your piece is going to look like. So the first thing in the little packet is beads needed and bead counts. All right, and so you'll see I've got an example. So on the first page of your pattern, you will notice that we have what's called a bead legend. This bead legend is going to have several things that you need to be aware of. The first thing you'll notice is it says chart number A, chart number B, C, and D. All right, so this is the letter that is going to correspond, when we get into it, into our bead graph. All right, so this is going to tell me the color. So when I see A here, I'll know that that is going to be the black A. All right, or when I see D, I know that that is going to be my chartreuse color. So that is just going to tell us the letter of our color. So the more colors you have, the more letters you're going to have. Now, I have seen some patterns that take up so many letters that they go into double letters or numbers. And you'll see that here on the first page. The next thing you notice on the pattern is what's called the DB number. Now, if your pattern is made with delicate beads, you will see DB. DB means delicate beads. So for this, A is DB10 or 010. My number B is DB, so delicate bead 722. So this is your color number. If it was using a different brand of bead, you are going to see a different code here for the color number. So those are your color numbers. Now the next line is going to give you the color. Now this is where it gets tricky. All delicate beads have a universal number. All right, so that means no matter where you order, if you order DB 010, 0010, 10, however it's stated on the color number, that color, no matter where you order from, is going to be the same exact color. Now, I said that the names of the colors get tricky, and here's why. It's because not all companies and not all software programs call the colors by the same names. So, like this DB722, they may call this opaque orange, and a designer may choose to call it, a designer or a software may choose to call it like Orangelicious or Orange Pack. match or something like that. So you never really want to go by the name of the color. You always want to go by the number. Now, no matter if you're using Delica beads, regular Miyuki seed beads, Tohos, Preciosas, all of those are going to have a number. So make sure to go by the number. And if you have a pattern from a designer or a book that only calls for the color name, then I would make sure to contact that designer to get specific numbers for these color names, so that way you know that you're getting the correct color for your project. You'll notice that after our color name, we have what says count. All right, this is how many beads we are going to need of each color. So for this pattern, for a 6.5 inch bracelet, I'm going to need 396 of DB010. I'm going to need 388 of 722 and so forth. So this tells you the counts for your project. And I also explain this on the top of page 3. So this will give you everything that you need to know here at the top for your bead legend. All right. Then we go from our bead legend, and sometimes a designer will tell you important things you need to know on this front page, like here, the finished size of the beadwork on this bracelet is 6.5 inches, which means that the finished bracelet from end to end, just beadwork, is 6.5 inches. When I add my clasp, that is going to add more length to the project. So you always kind of want to know how big or how small the bracelet is. And for me, normally I put this on the first page. So the next thing you find actually on your pattern is what's called the bead chart. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to know about the bead chart. And you'll see here, this is on page 3, what I'm talking about. But the first thing that you can see is that each bead is labeled with a letter. Now remember, this letter corresponds with the color that was on your bead legend. So remember, if I see an A, I know that I go back to my chart, and that is DB010. And so you will have a letter for each color that is in your design. So it's always good to know that. The next thing that you need to figure out is whether your project is regular peyote, 2-drop, 3-drop, and so forth. If you'll look here, you'll see that my beads here are in sets of 3. So 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So this tells me that I'm doing a 3-drop peyote stitch. And you'll see that I have these beads kind of yellowed out on this pattern that's actually in the pattern packet. I've got that. And now what this also tells me is if I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, this also tells me that I have an odd count peyote stitch. If I only had 14, then I would have an even count. So it's very important when you look at your bead chart to find out what type of peyote you're going to be doing and if it's even or odd count, because they are done differently. So on page 4 there of the pattern packet, if I was doing normal peyote, you would notice that I have just single columns of beads. Now, this one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 beads, so that tells me I have an odd count peyote stitch. Now, for the next example on the page, you'll notice that I have, instead of having single columns like I have here, I have double columns. So 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. This tells me I'm going to be doing 2-drop peyote stitch. When I do 2-drop peyote stitch, I pick up 2, I skip 2, and I go through 2. All right. Again, I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and you see here I've got a line hanging out here. This is 15, so this is odd count. So this is a whole nother story, but I just want you to understand how you figure out whether it's regular peyote, 2-drop peyote or 3-drop peyote. Now, they can go up to a 9-drop peyote, which is huge. I have never seen that, and I've beaded for 20 years. So always pay attention to that. So the bead chart you see is very important because, again, it's going to tell you your type of peyote and even or odd count. So normally your chart, I always print mine out as a large version of the chart, which is going to give me a big picture that I can follow when I am working the bracelet. Now, after that, you'll notice you have a word chart. All right, the word chart is a little bit different, and you'll notice that this is on page 5 of the pattern packet. So if you're lucky, you'll get one of these word charts. Always check to see if your pattern has a word chart. Some people love the word chart, and some people are fine with following their bead chart. But a lot of people love that word chart, so it's really good to have. A lot of times your magazines will not put these in there, so you kind of have to get those from the designer or go by your word chart. All right, so we're going to learn what all of this means here on our pattern. So the first thing you notice in your word chart is that where here it says row 1 and 2, it does not mean that I am picking up row 1 and peyote in row 2. This means that I have to pick up all of these beads to make rows 1 and 2. All right. Then row 3, 4, 5. So everything after row 1 and 2 is a single row, because row 1 and 2 is just going to be us picking up beads. And then row 3 is where we actually start our peyote stitch. All right. So don't let that confuse you. I had a lady a few weeks ago, and she was so confused about this, and we went back and forth several times through email. You are only picking up these beads. So don't get confused or discombobulated about seeing 2 rows into 1, because it's going to take those 2 rows to make the line to where we can start the peyote stitch. The next thing you'll notice is on the first row there is an L. This simply means I'm picking up my beads from left to right. All right, then the next row has an R. This means I'm picking up my beads and stitching from right to left. So we're going in a zigzag back and forth motion. Now, if I am left-handed, even though it says left, and I'm picking up with my left hand, and so actually I'm picking up kind of the opposite, it's still okay, because the pattern, as long as you follow exactly what to pick up and where, it will turn out exactly the same. So don't freak out about where it says left, right, left, right. This just tells me I'm going to be working in that zigzag pattern, back and forth, back and forth. Along with knowing how we're going to work it, you'll notice that in your parentheses you have a number, and outside of it is the letter. Well, the letter corresponds with what we learned over here back on this first page about our color number, or our number of our bead. That's what that corresponds to. The number corresponds to tell me how many of that letter I'm going to pick up. So for this line of beads, I would pick up 2A, 1D, 1C, 1B, 1D, 1C, 1B, and so forth until I get all these beads picked up. Then I'll start my peyote actually on row 3. Now, this is where you have to be careful, and this is why it's so important to know what kind of peyote that you have, because this is going to tell me how I'm going to pick up my beads. So total for the row, these are the beads that I will pick up. But determining which one will determine if I'm going to pick up 1 bead at a time, 2 beads at a time, or 3 beads at a time, or more even. So let's say I'm doing 3 bead peyote stitch, which this one is. So instead of picking up one bead and doing my peyote, I need to pick up 3 at a time. So I'm going to pick up 1 B and 2A. So that's going to be my first stitch. So the next 3 beads I need, I'm going to pick up a C, a B, and a C. So that's my next 3. The final 3 I would pick up for that row would be my 2A and my 1B. So the numbers don't mean that I'm going to pick up that 1 bead and do my peyote. This just means of what color I'm going to pick up. So one of the things that I kind of like to do is when I pick up a row, I lay all my beads out exactly like they are on here. And then I just pick them up in the sets that I need to, whether it's 2, 3, or whatever. Normally I don't do that for single, but it really depends on what you get used to and what you like and understand. Now, normally, your peyote, row 1 and 2, is going to start, and again, it depends on the designer and the software that they use. But normally, my row 1, and I'm going to look here and make sure, yeah, on page 6 of your pattern, it says, in most word charts, rows 1 and 2 will be the beads at the top of your bead chart. So what that means is on rows 1 and 2 here, I can go to my bead chart, which is my picture, and that is going to be this first row here. So you'll notice with my first row, it says to pick up 2A, 1D, there's 2A, 1D, a C, a B, a D, C, B, D. So you can see those are my beads that I need. So normally that's how it is. Now some do start backwards, meaning it's going to start here at the bottom and work its way up. So that's another thing you can kind of pay attention to as you are working with your word chart. Now, I did put in here, there are some special exceptions. And the special exceptions I put on there is sometimes a designer will make a tapered end. Like I'm one of those designers who like a tapered end. But you can't start out peyote with 1 bead. So like you'll notice here in this one, it says row 1 and 2, I'm going to pick up 1A. I can't do that. Row 3, I'm going to pick up 2A. Now I can do that, but there's really nothing to peyote. So there are some special exceptions that you kind of have to work and follow through on that. So you'll see on page 7 of this pattern packet how I kind of explain that. So what I do as a designer is if somebody is starting with a tapered end like this, I'm always going to start at the widest part of my taper. So instead of starting with row 1, I may have to start with row 5 or 6. So you can see the example here. You'll see, according to my pattern over here, all right, it says row 1 and 2, I'm going to pick up 1A. So that's my row 1. Row 3 says I'm going to pick up 2A. So that's what I've got in purple. Row 4 says 3A. So again, that's in yellow. 1, 2, 3. Row 5 said 4A. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And row 6 says 3A, so 1, 2, 3. So the widest part of my piece is going to be this row 5 here. So I would actually pick up the beads for row 5 and 6. So instead of starting with row 1 like my pattern tells me, I would actually find out where the widest row is, which is here, and I would start and I would pick up A, 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 A. So up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So once I've picked up those beads, then I would start my actual peyote with row 7, which is highlighted in the red. So row 7 down here tells me I'm going to pick up 4 A's. Boom, 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 boom. That's my peyote. That's where I'm going to start. So it says, as you can see on the word chart to the left, row 7 is 4 A's, and that's exactly what our bead chart says. I know this can be tricky to start this way, but the more practice you get, the better. So what I'm going to do for you guys, since we now know how to read a basic peyote pattern, is this week I'm going to list the pattern here for just this simple bracelet, starting at a straight line in rows 1 and 2, and there's nothing really spectacular that you need to learn about this. But in next week's video, I'm going to start out with one that has a deep taper. I think this is one of the freebies on my website. I can't remember this specific pattern, but it has a pretty deep taper. Some earrings that I pulled this one up, they have a pretty deep taper. So I will actually show you, we'll start out next week, and I'm going to show you how we find the widest point. We're going to follow our graph here, how to find that widest point and where to start. So that way I can get it right and leave enough to go back and do my taper. So I think that's going to be a really fun thing for you guys to learn. So just a really simple project to give you a try this week. Your project uses 4 colors, and I cannot wait to see what you do with this 3-drop peyote bracelet. So friends, I hope that you learned something today, and I hope that you will go to my website, Off the Beaded Path, beadstore.com, download that free information packet. It's completely free, and download the bracelet pattern. It's going to be in the little thing with this packet for the download. So make sure to go and download it so you can make your own bracelet this week. Remember, you don't have to do Halloween colors. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't do these colors. You can substitute your colors for anything you want. And for my friends who are just learning peyote or who have no clue what 3-drop peyote is, it's okay. I've got several videos here on my YouTube channel that teach you how to do that, and I'll hopefully get my wonderful husband Sammy to put them up top or below the links there so that you can find those and be really successful this week in doing your 3-drop peyote. Now make sure to come back next week because, like I said, we're going to learn how to find where to start if we have a taper, and we're going to learn how to read our graph in case we don't have a word chart or, something like that. So there's more to learn next week. I'll have another fun pattern, so make sure to come back to learn our new project. Guys, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.